watching Goal Line Extended presented by Lacrosse Flash.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Goal Line Extended on the Lacrosse Flash Podcast Network. Today is Friday, May 28th, and I'm your host, Ryan Hulsebos. Glad that you could join us as we get set to look ahead to Final Four weekend, as we'll have two great matchups on tap tomorrow afternoon with the top-ranked Tar Heels meeting Virginia for the third time this season. That game will start at noon Eastern on ESPN2, followed by Duke and Maryland at 2:30, with the winners set to meet on Monday to crown the 2021 NCAA D1 men's lacrosse champion. So an exciting weekend ahead. We're happy that you're all joining us, and Flash analyst Harrison Silcox is standing by for what will be the final preview of a college lacrosse weekend this season. So he'll be with us in a moment. And then with PLO training camp beginning today, we will continue our Flash team previews ahead of the 2021 season. And today we will be talking about the Chrome Lacrosse Club, and Flash analyst Liam Kelly, who has covered Chrome all offseason, will be joining us. And then the feature article will be available on lacrosseflash.com, as well as our other six team previews, being that this is now the sixth of eight. We have two more to go, so make sure to check those out again on the Lacrosse Flash homepage. Also on lacrosseflash.com, Kansas Attackman in 2020 MLL champion Bryce Wasserman talks about his journey to lacrosse into the PLO ahead of training camp and the 2021 season on the second edition of Behind the Cage with John Lintz. Make sure to check that out as I welcome in Harrison Silcox to today's show. Harry, I'm excited, my man. We finally made it. A testament to all the players and to all the coaches and to all the team staffs. Everybody bought in from day one. This would not have been possible without them, but we've made it. Final Four weekend, Memorial Day weekend. It is a beautiful day outside, at least where I am today, and a great day to talk about lacrosse. What's going on, my man?
Yeah, we made it. I think that's kind of a good way to put it. Last year at this point, I was watching the reruns on that ESPN was putting out, the national championship games back in over the last decade. So to be back here for the first time since 2019, it feels great. Capacity, they've increased the limits there. So, we could have more fans there. That could play a huge impact on whoever's fan base can travel out this weekend. We can get into all that later. But regardless, I'm pumped. And like I said, we made it. It's good to be here.
We've made it. We haven't had, obviously we were unable to have any sports as, last spring, early last summer being with COVID-19. So we haven't had a lacrosse national championship since 2019. Obviously, Virginia trying to repeat here in 2021 as they won the championship there in 2019. But Harrison, glad to have you joining us as always as we get set to look ahead to these two great games that the lacrosse gods have given us for this weekend after what was the most exciting quarterfinal weekend, or I should say one of the most exciting quarterfinal weekends in recent memory. 3 overtime games gives us the top 4 teams in this tournament meeting in East Hartford. Looking back at last weekend's games, which of these 4 teams impressed you the most, and then who came out and surprised you in this quarterfinal round?
It's hard not to say Virginia, just with the way that they handled Georgetown, just winning that game 14-3. I think based off of what you saw, how you saw Georgetown really dismantle Virginia in the opening round, I don't think people really expected that game to be as bad as it was in favor of Virginia. So Virginia really impressed me on that front. And, that's the lacrosse that you want to be playing when you come into a semifinal weekend. Out on top of that, some of the experience that team has. So it's a huge win for them. That was just really impressive for me. And then to answer the second part of your question, just about how, what team maybe surprised me, it's really hard to answer that because all the other games were so close. I think Rutgers was a team that surprised me, but they came up short. I thought Loyola was a really exciting upset pick that I had in our pick'em, which I don't think is doing too well, by the way. But I thought the Greyhounds were a nice surprise, but ultimately I wasn't surprised seeing Joe Robertson score another game winner for Duke. It seems to be going on all season long for the Blue Devils. But I will say I was surprised by Maryland. Not that I was surprised that they won that game, because Maryland is a very good team. They could very well win a national championship. But I was surprised with the lead that they jumped out to in that Notre Dame game. And then when they were down by 3 late in that fourth quarter, the way that they clawed back surprised me. And then for John Tillman to not call a timeout and for Maryland to score as quickly as they did in overtime, was a huge surprise because we're used to, overtime starts, team wins face-off, timeout called. You got a minute that goes by. Sometimes you might get the other team calling a timeout. Another minute goes by, and then you get a play. So that surprised me. So kind of a long answer to your question, but it was a packed weekend last weekend, and I expect it to be more fun this weekend.
I missed the final there of that Notre Dame and Maryland game because the Notre Dame and Maryland game, excuse me. I was sitting on the couch, obviously with my buddies. We're sitting watching the game, and regulation ends. We're going into overtime. I say, all right, I'm going to get up, go next door, just walk next door, make myself a quick sandwich. On the TV next door, my buddy, he was watching something else. So I walk back next door, game's over. I'm like, it's been 3 minutes. I expected a face-off win. I really didn't care who won the face-off. I was like, I'm expecting a face-off win. I'm going to walk back. Coming out of the timeout, I'm going to be able to sit down. Probably we're to see some sort of change of possession. We're going to see another timeout when the ball gets on the other end. No, Maryland wins the draw right off the bat, gets it to their lefty attackman there on the one side, and we see a goal immediately. I missed the final of that one, disappointed by it, but it's all good.
That happened to me. Goal. That happened to me in 2010. If you go all the way back to Notre Dame Duke, the national championship, with like CJ Costabile just taking the face off. We were watching that game. My mom asked me to go outside and do something. I was trying to get it done as quickly as I could. I thought maybe there was going to be a commercial break or something or whatever. And next thing I know, I run inside and like Scott Rogers just got scored on by a long stick off of a face-off. I couldn't believe that one. So I feel your pain on that.
Very unfortunate. I'm going to take that into account this weekend. If we hopefully we get a overtime game or two. But you brought it up as well there. A tough weekend for the two of us in our Flash staff picks. You went 1 for 3, North Carolina being your only hit of the weekend. I also went 1 for 3. I had Duke as my only winner. So we're hoping to turn that around this weekend with the final 3 games that we will have, starting with these 2 semifinals. And let's start with that first one. UNC and Virginia. The Tar Heels come into this one as 1.5 favorites over the defending champs, who put up a beating on Georgetown last weekend that you mentioned before. One of the best defensive performances by a Virginia team in the history of the program in this tournament. But we got the North Carolina offense led by Tewaaraton finalist Chris Gray against this long Virginia defense. They can cover a ton of ground. We've seen it all season, headlined by LSM Jared Connors. He's been we really saw it, I think, in this game. I believe he had an assist this weekend against Georgetown, really playing a big role in the transition game. And then we have the high-powered UVA offense led by Connor Schellenberger and Matt Moore, who run that 2-quarterback system that Virginia has operated with this season, with those 2 elite playmakers up against Will Bowen in this UNC defense led by goalie Colin Krieg. With this goalie play this season has been, or in this tournament, has been very good. Krieg being the difference maker there in that first meeting between these 2 teams back in March. Going into this matchup, some key takeaways that you're looking for as something that could turn the tide in this one for either of these teams.
This is really outside of, I guess you could say outside of that second meeting between North Carolina and Duke, this is really the first ACC game that we're seeing that does have some serious stakes behind it. Without there being an ACC tournament, and obviously they don't get an AQ either, and it kind of felt like, this conference was going to be 3, 4, 5 bid league. They wound up being all 5. So some of the regular season games in some people's eyes felt kind of empty, no matter how exciting the lacrosse was, because at the end of the day, Duke was still Duke, North Carolina was still North Carolina, so on and so forth. So for North Carolina, Virginia, they're meeting each other for the 3rd time, but really the first time that you're getting an ACC matchup that does have some serious weight to it, where, winner goes on, loser goes home. So how do those teams respond to that pressure and what's going to be another tough physical ACC game that has been common throughout the league all season, unless, maybe you're playing Syracuse for some of these teams to take a shot at the orange there. Apologize to the fans, but you know what? I'm not sorry. So moving on to the matchup. Moving on to the matchup. Syracuse got eliminated in the first round. We don't need to talk about them. I think faceoffs are going to be a big deal in this game. How is PD LaSalle going to play? I think at times people felt like he was one of the better faceoff guys in the ACC this season, and at other moments, I think that he kind of struggled in games where people expected him to play better than what he wound up doing. So I think he's going to be critical. Possessions are going to be huge in this game. What I look at the most, though, is the experience that these teams bring into this game. For North Carolina, they have been to this weekend before, but back in 2016. And this team is a lot different than what that team was back then 5 years ago. For Virginia, they're the defending champs. A lot of the guys on this team were in this same position in 2019, including the defense that you had mentioned, especially goaltender Alex Rode, who was a big piece and how well they played down the stretch in that 2019 season. I mean, they had a double overtime game against Duke to advance to the championship game. So they are kind of used to this scene. I think that's going to help them in the early going. As you see teams, they kind of take some time to settle in these high pressure games when you're in a bit of a bigger stadium environment. And, especially with a larger crowd there as well. So Virginia's got the experience there, not up and down their entire roster. Obviously, there's some younger guys like Schellenberger and Cormier who are there. But North Carolina doesn't really have anybody who's been at this stage before. So how do they respond in the early going? Are they going to be a little bit sloppy? Are there going to be some nerves there? They could just come out and be rock solid. So really the first 5-10 minutes of this game, I think, are going to be really important in setting the tone. And I think ultimately it's going to come down to which goalie. It sounds kind of cheesy to say, but which goalie is going to play the best? Just with Colin Krieg, I mean, he's been so good, but he's also just a freshman. Alex Rode, maybe not as good as what people were expecting him to be this year, but also, again, he's been here before, had 10 saves against Georgetown, and the defense has really been coming around for Virginia here in this tournament. So that's what I'm looking at. That's my lens on how I'm viewing this first semifinal matchup.
The experience definitely looking to play a part. I mean, I had Chris Gray and Alex Trippi from the University of North Carolina for a GLE Flash special. That's up on the Flash YouTube channel right now. You can go check that out. But they're both seniors. They're both coming back for next year. But Alex is a senior. He's been at UNC the past 4 seasons. Chris just came in, obviously being a transfer from Boston University. So I was trying to ask them kind of because, Alex hasn't been to a NCAA tournament before. Hasn't even been in a tournament before. Chris coming in, obviously being that they didn't finish out the year last season, so he hasn't been in a tournament yet with this team. So being that they are the number one team kind of coming in with that pressure, it's going to be real interesting to see how the experience of this team. Obviously, they do have defensive leaders. They got Will Bowen out there. Being, I believe he's a senior or a junior. I believe he's a junior. But you do have some of those leaders, so we'll see where the experience factors in. But the Tar Heels getting scoring from all over, especially in the midfield over the last few games. That production cannot be understated. And then Virginia, as I said before, very high-powered offense, a ton of offensive talent. You got Petey LaSalle coming in hot down the alley off the faceoff. It seems like Jared Connors practically floats up the field, a real danger in transition, as I said before. So we'll wait and see how this one pans out. The first game of that Saturday doubleheader, and the winner will advance to play the winner of the second game on Monday. As in that second game, we will see the Duke Blue Devils and the undefeated Maryland Terrapins, who was able to knock off Notre Dame last weekend in the quarterfinal, keeping this Final Four from being an all ACC affair. But even so, looking ahead to this one, it's Goliath versus Goliath. Duke's been to the Final Four 13 times, 11 times under head coach John Danowski, with 4 titles coming in as well. And then Maryland trying to be the first undefeated national champion since Virginia, who did it back 15 years ago, back in 2006. So unreal talent on both ends of the field for both teams. We got 2 Warton finalists, defensive and offensive player of the year finalists for the ACC and Big Ten in this one. Looking ahead to this one, what are you watching for?
Duke really gets my attention in this matchup because out of these 4 teams, Duke was really the only team that people were saying in the preseason, and I want to stress that in the preseason, the expectation for Duke this year was just, all right, championship weekend. I mean, in my eyes, that's what I felt like it was like for Duke this year is, okay, they're going to be really good. The whole super team, the transfers they brought in, the freshman class they brought in. Okay, we're going to see these guys championship weekend. And now here we are. Duke is there. I don't think the offense has been as high octane as what people have thought. But, I mean, Greggy says, Lacrosse Flash contributor, he says Duke's a team of destiny this year with a lot of these close games that they've pulled out late, comebacks they've had, overtime winners. I talked about Joe Robertson at the top of the segment, just about what he's done in the clutch and the game-winning goals, the overtime goals that he scored for this Duke team. So they definitely have the superstar talent, Michael Sowers, freshman, Brennan O'Neill. They got Jake O'Neill at the faceoff, Joe Robertson, who, I mean, he was their leading goal scorer a couple of years ago, got hurt last season, had to have some surgery. So even before COVID-19, he was already coming back for this year. And so, I mean, Duke is loaded. The one thing I look for, though, and he also Nakai Montgomery, to mention another guy, but obviously the list goes on and on. But sometimes Duke's offense does look a little bit more stagnant than what you would expect from a Danowski team at times this season. And not that that's the end of the world for Duke, but I think in a game against Maryland, where the toughest defense that Duke probably faced all year was Notre Dame, and they played them twice. And the next defense after that, probably going to be Maryland with guys like Nick Grill and Brett Makar. So in a game like this, of this magnitude, you really can't afford to be stagnant on offense or have some turnovers or be wasting time on that shot clock. You need to make sure that your possessions are as efficient as possible. You're getting to your spots, because Logan McNady has been a really tough goaltender to beat in this tournament, and really just down the stretch in the regular season too, if you want to go back even further. So Duke needs to make sure that they're efficient offensively. They're getting to their spots. They're getting good looks at the cage. They're getting shots thrown in the direction, maybe a couple shot clock resets here and there, but they can't afford to have some of these lulls in production that we saw them have a little bit in the regular season. And I think one big advantage that they're going to have is Jake Naso at the faceoff X. I think that's one thing where Maryland hasn't been bright this season is at faceoff. Obviously, they have the defense and the goaltending to make up for that. And then on the other end for the Terps is Jarrett Bernhardt, who, in my mind, he's wrapped up the Tewaaraton. Unless something crazy happens this weekend, I think Bernhardt, the Tewaaraton is his to lose, and I don't see a situation where he loses it. And Notre Dame was the toughest defense that Maryland has faced this season, and I don't think there's a defense out there that matches up better than what Notre Dame did, where they have three guys who would all be top cover guys on any other team in the country going up against that starting Maryland attack. And Bernhardt still had 5 goals. He still got to his spots, and it was easy. And so I wonder, how does he match up with JT Giles Harris? I know that Giles obviously has a little bit of that football background in him. He's another one of those guys who looked at playing football, wound up not doing it. Obviously, Bernhardt looked at it, then didn't, now is at Ferris State next season. So I think physicality is going to be huge there between two guys with some serious football backgrounds. And so that'll be a fun matchup to watch. But outside of JT Giles Harris, what's the rest of the Duke defense going to do? Not to say that Duke has a bad defense, because they don't, and I think people who watch them this season would agree with that. But Maryland also has a lot of firepower as well, and I think this is a game where maybe Wisniewski could shine a lot for Maryland, where Bernhardt's going to get all the headlines going into this game with the matchup against JT. Perfect time for Wisniewski, who, I mean, he at times has been just as good of a scorer as Bernhardt. I think those guys play together really well and have a lot of experience there. So Duke as a team, sorry about my dog.
You're all good. You're all good.
The team defense for Duke really is going to have to make sure that their head's on a swivel, that they're playing off ball just as well as they are on ball. And also other guys like Daniel Maltz, Kyle Long, Bubba Fairman. I mean, the depth is there for Maryland as well, just like it is for Duke. So, I mean, this is two heavy hitters, two blue bloods going at it. And I think of the two games, this is the game that I would expect the most if we see one to go into overtime.
Absolutely. And Duke has played in a handful of overtime games this season. So I would imagine and obviously hope, being that we're the Lacrosse fans here sitting watching on TV, we're hoping that this can go to overtime. And definitely I remember back from my conversation with Mike after the college draft, after he was drafted 2nd overall, he said, coming here, he said, it was really, obviously I would imagine all the ACC schools, probably Maryland in that mix as well, kind of coming down to what he was going to choose there to, pursue as a graduate program and to continue playing lacrosse. And he said, coming to Duke, it was that expectation that, yeah, we're going to be in Final Four weekend. Doesn't matter how we get there. If we got to blow teams out or if we win close games in overtime, we expect to be here. And that's the expectation when you walk into the locker room, when you walk into the coach's office on the field. We're going to be in the Final Four. This is a team that comes in with big expectations, came into the season with big expectations, comes into this tournament here with big expectations. We'll see if they can get to the final here on Monday. But we also brought up the goalie play being phenomenal. We brought up a few of those names there, being Logan McNaney, whether it's Max Adler for Duke, Krieg for UNC. Goalie play has been phenomenal, and we've seen, obviously, being that we had overtime games there in the quarterfinal, we're hoping for and expecting these games to be tight here this weekend and then even into the final. Goalie play looking like it's going to be play a very significant factor in this weekend's games.
Yeah, I really think it is. And just from a standpoint of, I think what stands out for me when I remember some championship weekends is, what goalie is going to make that save that shouldn't have been a save. Not necessarily the degree of difficulty that we saw with Sam Schaefer in round one and that win against Denver, but what goalie is going to be able to make more of those saves that's, maybe off stick hip or on the doorstep where they're shutting down a shooter where everybody's kind of on the edge of their seat when they see a guy with time and room who they expect to score and you see a goalie stand tall. Those are plays that build momentum for your team. They're confidence boosters for your goalie, your defense. Gets the sideline hyped up, and you're taking away a great scoring opportunity from another team. And then when you move the ball on offense, then you can, kind of make that 2-goal swing where you're taking away one and scoring one for yourself. And those type of plays are going to be huge. Obviously, that goes without saying with a goalie just being the last line of defense. So how do the goalies handle that pressure? I think it's going to be interesting. I think guys like Adler should be able to handle it. I think, Rhodes been there before. McNaney, obviously, and John Tillman is going to have his goaltender ready. The guy who I'm really not that I'm not questioning him. I'm not questioning his talent, and it's not that I don't think he's going to play well, but just the fact that he's a freshman is Colin Krieg. So how does he handle this pressure? He's never been in an environment like this before. We know that they've opened up capacity at the games. Is the crowd going to be a little bit different? He's not used to being in these college games with loud vocal crowds. So, how well are Virginia's fans going to travel? How well are North Carolina's own fans going to travel? So I just wonder, just from you look at an age standpoint of a guy who's a freshman, how he handles the moment. And he could be just fine because I believe Alex Rode was a freshman back in 2019, and they won the championship, and he was stellar. So there you go. Absolutely,
hoping to see some freshman dominance here this weekend, whether it be from Krieg. We also have a handful of other highly touted freshmen here in this Final Four, so hoping to see a great showing from them. But the college lacrosse season coming to a finish, and with that, we will see another champion crowned. Will it be Virginia to repeat like they did in 2019, or will it be UNC, Duke, or Maryland to take the title? It's been a historic year after everything that it's taken to get to this point. The sacrifices made all added up to getting to this weekend. So again, congratulations to all the players, to all the coaches, everybody else involved in the success of these 4 teams this season, as well as every other program in the country that was able to participate this season. Props to them for being able to get that done. Make sure to tune into these 2 games tomorrow. Number 1, North Carolina, and number 4, Virginia at noon Eastern, and then number 2, Duke, and number 3, undefeated Maryland at 2:30, both live on ESPN2 from East Hartford, Connecticut. The winners to play on Monday, I believe, at noon on ESPN2. I believe that is the location and time. Not 100% sure though, but make sure to tune into that. Harry, before I let you go, let's make our final college picks here for the weekend. Again, coming off a tough weekend for the 2 of us. Time to turn it around. It starts right here, right? We'll start with the North Carolina and Virginia game, the rubber match between these 2. Who advances to Monday's final?
It was a rough weekend last weekend, but I'm going to take the Cavaliers. I think Virginia's going to get it done. I like the experience they bring to the table. I really like Lars Tiffany as a head coach. I think it's going to be really close. Maybe not as high scoring as some people think, but I'm going to take Virginia.
Both of those games, Virginia and North Carolina, that they played this season, both of them were very high scoring. So we'll see if that repeats into this one. You have Virginia. I picked against both of these 2 teams last weekend, and I picked against Virginia in the first round of this tournament. So there's really not any kind of fallback for me here. I expect it to be close. Unlike you, I do expect it to be high scoring, and I think Petey LaSala is the difference for Virginia in this game. He can make impacts all over the field, not just at the face-off X. So I got the Hoos getting back to championship Monday. Let's move on to that second game, Duke and Maryland. Who do you got on this one?
I'm going to go with the Blue Devils. I like what Greggy's been telling us. Team of Destiny is what he's been saying. Duke has been my team since the beginning of the year. I know, very original for me to pick the Blue Devils in what was probably the best offseason any college lacrosse program has ever had. But I'm going to pick Duke to win this game over Maryland. I think it's going to be really tight, though. And this is a game I think it's probably going to be in the 10 to 13 goal range. Be really close. I like just Michael Sowers and John Danowski and his team kind of being able to just kind of escape a close one there to close things out on Saturday this weekend. So yeah, give me the Blue Devils, and I'm gonna double down. I'm gonna have them going all the way, winning the national championship.
Oh, there we go. Hopefully, I don't exactly have Duke winning the national championship. We'll probably figure that out there Sunday. So I'll wait for that. But it's really either you're turning this around or you're going in the same direction, which is down. And I'm going to be on that train with you because I'm also going Duke. Maryland comes into Thursday night at least favored by 1.5 with it opening with Duke as the favorite. So obviously that line there flipping. And if there's one thing we can say about Duke this season, they've played in a ton of tight games that have come down to the wire, coming out on top in most of them, and that is why I also like Duke. I think this game stays close, and then in those situations, tight games, pressure situations, Duke has that experience. Joe Robertson being the one that's come up clutch with the 3 overtime goals this season. Anyone on this Blue Devils offense can take over at any time, whether it be in overtime or just at any point during the game. So I got Duke. Again, either we're both going up or we're both falling down. So we're on this train together here. And so, again, I got Duke. Give me the 1.5 as well, even though the line does look to be moving the other way. It might go down to a goal at some point or even a pick 'em. So if you're keeping that in mind, make sure – or I'm saying if you're thinking about making a bet on something like that, make sure to keep that in mind. That line looks like it is moving. But very exciting stuff as we look ahead to the weekend. Final Four weekend as the winners of Saturday's game will move on to play on Monday afternoon for the Division I NCAA Men's Lacrosse Championship. We won't be having a show between now and Monday's championship game, but we will be back on Tuesday to recap the weekend, so make sure to tune in for that. And then our final picks for Monday's final from our entire Flash staff will be available on Instagram and Twitter for Harry. If Duke does win here on Saturday, you got Duke, you're saying, for Monday?
Yeah, pencil them in. Champs.
There we go. I'm going to wait, I think, because I think if Maryland wins and Virginia wins, I don't know who I'm picking between the two of those. I would say if it's Duke, UNC, I think I'm taking Duke to win there in that rubber match. If it's Duke, Virginia, though, even that, I don't know who I would go with at this point. So something that I would consider here over the week.
If Maryland wins, whoever they're playing against, just that's a team I'm going to pick because I have beef with Maryland fans who, for some reason, think that everybody's been doubting them all season just because they're not in the ACC. We all knew Maryland was good. We all knew Maryland was good. We just questioned
about
this strength of schedule for a conference that only got 2 teams in the tournament and had Johns Hopkins and Penn State who did not play particularly well all year long.
Absolutely, and you even got an Ohio State team that wasn't its best this season. So it was a storyline. We were just following the storyline. All the haters coming out after us here. We got the Big Ten haters on one side, the Maryland people, going back and forth here. But make sure to check that out once we have that show out there on Tuesday. We'll recap that game, and then we'll also make our picks ahead of this weekend for the PLL season because that also begins this coming Friday. And then sit back, relax, and watch some great lacrosse this weekend as this is just the second time in the last 15 years that the top 4 seeds all advance to the Final Four. So a treat that we got. We'll watch, wait, and see who advances to Monday's final. And Harry, I want to thank you again so much for joining me today. Enjoy your Memorial Day and Final Four weekend. And Liam Kelly will be joining me next to talk about the Chrome Lacrosse Club. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.
Watching Goal Line Extended presented by Lacrosse Flash.
Welcome back to the show as we continue our 2021 PLO team previews ahead of training camp, which officially begins today, Friday, May 28, as we are now just a week away from the start of the 2021 PLO season. And joining me today to talk about the PLO and to continue our Flash team previews is Liam Kelly. Liam, welcome back to the show. How are you doing, my guy?
Oh, thanks, man. First time talking PLL and not college, so that's always exciting. Yeah.
Hey, first time of many as we're getting very close here to the PLL season. Obviously, college lacrosse season wrapping up here very shortly. Definitely trying to get you on here as we have two more shows covering college lacrosse. But glad to have you with us as always. We were thrown a ton of news during this week, and we're recording this on Wednesday evening. So hopefully we don't miss anything that drops on Thursday or early Friday. But glad to have you with us, Liam, as we get ready to look at the Chrome Lacrosse Club here ahead of training camp coming into 2021 with. And I feel like we've been saying it with every team here, but what looks like one of the league's top rosters, talent up and down the board. You have one of the top face-off guys over the past two seasons in Connor Farrell. So a lot to look forward to this season if you're Chrome, coming off that tough 2019 season and then a turnaround last summer, that saw a tough playoff defeat to the, at the time, winless Chaos. So we'll wait and see what this team looks like out of training camp. We'll speculate that a little bit today, but I want to start in the National Lacrosse League because Sportico announced early Wednesday that San Diego Seals and Brooklyn Nets owner and PLO investor Joe Tsai has reached an agreement to bring the NLO its 15th franchise ahead of the 2022-2023 season in the Sin City. Las Vegas gets yet another pro sports team. We should be hearing more about it very, very soon. But Liam, this is exciting. The NLO continuing to expand this time to Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good move. Las Vegas is actually a bigger lacrosse town than I think a lot of people realize. The game's definitely growing out west, but it's the perfect market if you want teams to come in and be excited to be there. They're going to market it well. Obviously, you can use Vegas however you want. You can look at the Golden Knights as an example with the hockey side of things. You can do party packages. You can bring people through the doors and you can get them in there. And once they're in, the NLL is the perfect product to give somebody, especially looking for a fun night. You get, the fighting aspect. You get a high intensity box. You get up and down. It's just a great place to be. I think Joe Tsai is the right guy to do it as well. I've been to Nets games where he's taken the time to come down and just make sure that the teams that we bring when we're doing our trips and our coaching trips and our recruiting stuff. He just makes sure that everybody's involved and welcome. And when he's involved with the Seals as well, I've been to Seals games. It's such an electric time. It's always fun. You just can't ask for much more if you're going to expand. Good location, great owner, and he already knows what he's doing in the league. He's already very heavily involved. He just wants to see everything grow and expand. So it's kind of an ideal spot for them. And then, you couple that with Vegas, it's Vegas. So it's going to be a show. It's going to be fun. And, guys are going to want to be there.
Absolutely. I think you put it perfectly there. Vegas is Vegas. Very exciting stuff usually goes down when you're in Vegas. So looking forward to obviously the NLL bringing a franchise out to Las Vegas, Nevada. Obviously other pro sports leagues. The NFL brought the Las Vegas Raiders, or the Raiders out to Las Vegas. The NHL, an expansion team in Las Vegas with the Golden Knights. The Athletics for baseball, there's rumors swirling around that they might be leaving the Oakland area, going to Las Vegas. So obviously now the NLL jumping on this as well. And Joe Tsai continuing to put up top dollar to grow our game, something that we are very, very grateful for. And we're looking forward to seeing the continued impact on the sport and everything around the sport that he continues to make. And awesome for the NLL and lacrosse fans, another franchise, and this one's in a revenue hotbed. So very excited to see what Tsai can do there in Vegas. We also saw some NLL signings, notably Josh Byrne and Chase Frazier with the Buffalo Bandits this week, and we'll also continue tracking those as we go. We'll have a big recap once the college lacrosse season is over. So for our NLL fans, hang tight. Make sure to keep your eyes open for that as we'll be recapping all of that NLL news. But we also had early in the week the training camp rosters released ahead of today, and what concerned many was that a few notable names were not listed on select team rosters, including number 1 overall pick Jeff Teat, and in total 5 college draft selections from this past draft not included on these rosters. But then the PLL offered a little bit of clarity, releasing that updated unavailable to travel list, which for the Chrome includes attackman Jesse King, which we had already known about, but T added to the list for the Atlas. We'll go even longer without seeing him play. Trey LeClaire for the Archers, Ethan Walker for the Water Dogs, and to join Curtis Dixon and Challen Rogers with Chaos is Miles Thompson, as well as rookies Tanner Cook and Ryan Smith. So unfortunately, we won't be seeing these guys play to start the season, particularly unfortunate that we won't see T and LeClaire, but a tough way to start camp and to start the season for a few of these teams.
Yeah, it seems like that unable to travel roster initially wasn't really prepared. It was just like, oh, hey, this might be a thing. So they released a couple names and that was it. Obviously, guys' situations are going to change. Work, as there is progress towards, countries opening up however they will, and those travel restrictions being eased, that'll definitely change. It's unfortunate that as many rookies get hit as they do, because we know that this is a pretty tough league to crack, and there's a lot of guys that aren't even getting invited to camp. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes as we go. You mentioned Jesse King for the Chrome as why I'm here at this point today for this episode. It's tough because those guys are also going to take roster spots away from someone else once they come back. As I was kind of putting together what I expect to see out of this list, there's one or two guys who unfortunately are going to get snipped that definitely deserve to be playing and may have been playing for a long time. So you don't want to see that happen halfway through a season when you've been putting in all that time and effort. And it's just a weird situation that we're in for everybody right now. So hopefully those guys can get back sooner rather than later. But at this point, I would expect to see that list updated continually as we go. Maybe guys coming off, guys going back on, depending on living situations as well. So unfortunate, but it's going to be an evolving thing as we go.
Yeah, we were kind of just given this list. Weren't really given much context to like when, let's say, when we first found out that Jesse King was on the unavailable to travel list. How long would he be on that list? When could he come back? None of that was ever told to us. We were kind of just given this list. And obviously now given these names here, and as you're saying, unfortunately, we're probably going to see a few more names added to that. We're kind of hearing some rumors of guys that aren't getting visas in time, kind of stuff like that. Very unfortunate, but definitely tough for you to look at the Atlas. They'll be without their number one overall pick, the Archers, without their second round selection. And then there's a lot of unknowns around, as I was saying before, the timeline for when these guys will be back to play. We had Dan Aresti on Tuesday's show, and he didn't have many answers as to when we'll see a few of these guys back. So something that we'll need to wait on the league for as to when we can get this figured out and get these guys out on the field. And hopefully this doesn't affect anybody else as we get closer and closer to the season. But as we're saying, it probably will. And then with the unavailable to travel list, those guys will not count towards the 25-man rosters, but they will still stay with the team. So, for instance, Jesse King, he'll be the 26th player there on Chrome, but he won't be on the active roster. And then looking at some other names that won't be there for training camp, obviously 8 guys in total, not including Jared Bernhardt, will be out in Connecticut for the Final Four this weekend. It's not too far of a drive from Hartford to Boston, but we're expecting that a few of these guys might be unavailable to start the season, something that we will be following going into the weekend and into next week. But Liam, let's get this thing going. Chrome's running it back again for year 3 behind Connor Farrell, as I said before. He's been one of the top draw guys in the league over the past 2 seasons, hoping to continue that success into this season. But what's interesting, out of all 8 teams, Chrome is the only one to have just one listed faceoff specialist, obviously allowing more flexibility in terms of rostering more field players, but a difficult situation to be in if you run into injuries or fatigue during the game. Obviously, an injury would force students hit the player pool. He'll be able to do that the Monday, following week 1. But what do you expect the plan to be in terms of backing up Farrell? Jeremy Thompson was just recently signed. He served that role for Trevor Baptiste with the Atlas in Utah last summer. And then in our preparation for the college draft, it's now pretty widely known that Ryan Terrafango can carry his own there at the stripe. So how do you expect Chrome to go about backing up one of the top guys in the league?
Yeah, well, the good thing about Farrell is he's ultra competitive, but he's also a guy that he doesn't take very many procedure calls. Every once in a while you're going to run into him, but that's the real problem. He's a guy that can get on the field and stay on the field. If you need him to take 15 faceoffs or 30, he's going to do it. The procedures, obviously, you can't take the next draw. That's where you're going to run into some issues. But I don't actually think that Jeremy Thompson's going to crack this roster. It's going to take a lot of work for him. Just one, with the talent on the offensive side of the field and through the D middies. You're not getting many D mids on a roster. Not on game day. You only get 19 guys. So you got to have the guys that can play both short stick, D mid, and probably pick up a pole. So those are guys like a Donnie Moss or a James Barclay. And he's going to have to outcompete Ryan Terefenko in a lot of ways if he just wants to crack it as a backup face-off guy. Terefenko's, I think he played man up for Ohio State this year. He was doing that. He's taking wings. He's playing O. He's playing D. He's taking draws. Like,
face-offs.
He is literally
winning face-offs, not just taking them. He's winning face-offs.
He is the Swiss Army knife. He is going to be that guy in this league. I don't think he's coming in to be more than like a competitive option at camp, but nothing more than that. Terefenko is that guy. He's going to run your wing when he's not taking your face off. He's going to do everything. He's going to be on the field the whole time. His cardio, his athletic ability is obviously there because he's done it all year, all career at Ohio State. So your backup spot isn't as bad as it kind of seems to be. Obviously, the talent at face-off just got better with everybody coming in, TD graduating, some of those Notre Dame guys, all the other guys brought in from the player pool. Like, it is so good, but Farrell can be consistent. I think he faces off in the 60s, around that at least. So you're getting most of the possessions. You're going to have even more possessions from your wing play. And every so often, you have a guy that, even if he doesn't win the faceoff, can probably win a ground ball. So I think they're set. I don't see a problem really at that point of the field.
Ryan Terefenko, he fell in the 2021 college draft all the way down to a smiling Tim Sudan at 12 overall, who couldn't believe that he fell that far. And had Tom Rigney not run into some military obligations for the summer ahead of the draft, we might have seen Terefenko taken with the 3rd overall pick. So excited to see what he can bring to the table here for this Chrome team. And let's stay in the midfield. Terefenko joins Will Haas and Donnie Moss, as well as Ryan Bevel and Michael Brown and Jeremy Thompson in the short stick defensive midfield. A very deep group. You talked about Thompson before, but how do you expect this group to shake out?
I would expect Will Haas is automatically on the roster. There's no doubt about that. He's an all-world short stick D-midi, no matter what. And Terefenko is a lock for this group. I think you only have enough room to really bring on one more guy. Madursky at pole wasn't able to come back, and I think he had a short stick in his hand as well. Actually, no, you know what? Barclay had the pole in his hands, but he also played some short stick D-mid last year. Madursky was kind of a border guy that I figured if there was any border issues with guys traveling, not being able to get down, he was a guy that would crack in, but they didn't even have him on their training camp roster. So that kind of gives a bit of leeway for Donnie Moss to make an impact. I think he's a guy that he's played both. He's picked up a pole when he's had to. The guys getting picked up out of the player pool, I think they're good. I think that they just didn't compete with this roster last year. I think that Sudan's going to stay loyal to some of his guys, and there's Bevel or Brown could make a push at it, but with the familiarity to the league, to the roster, to the way the game's played, it just makes more sense to bring in a guy that can come in and just stay true to what he's been doing. And so I think Donnie Moss is that guy in this group. He picked up a pole a little bit last year as well. And that's what I was saying with Barclay as well. If you have those guys that can do both, then it just allows for more flexibility with the roster, and with injuries or anything coming up, like you said, they don't have to worry about that. They have guys that they can slot in at both spots. So it'll be good. It'll be competitive, but those guys kind of have that edge.
Absolutely. Definitely giving the edge there kind of to the guys that have been there. Will Haas being one of the best short stick defensive middies in the game over the past couple seasons. So definitely giving him a spot. Terefenko, as we said, slipped to 12. Could have been taken 3rd overall. Could have obviously been taken anywhere in between there. But definitely giving him a spot. A lot of short stick defensive midfielders on this training camp roster. So we'll see kind of how Sudan and staff go about keeping them? Obviously, wanting guys with a lot of flexibility, guys that can pick up a pull if needed, guys that can play, take a face off if needed, kind of that situation. So we'll see how that all unfolds. But there's also not a shortage of offensive weapons here in the midfield. John Rannigan, Ned Crotty, and Jordan McIntosh return for year 3 alongside rookie Justin Anderson, who will be playing in Hartford this weekend with North Carolina. And then at the attack, Jordan Wolf and Justin Gutterding, the staples of this offense the past 2 seasons. Matt Gaudette and Brendan Cavanaugh, they played roles in the success of this Chrome team last season. They're back as well. And then the additions to this offense, Randy Stotts and Colin Heacock in the entry draft, and Jackson Morrill in the college draft. You like all 7 of these attackmen to make this team, but how does that work? And where do you see a few of these guys fitting in? Because they can't all play attack, and we already know 2 of those guys that will be down there. So what do you expect this offense to look like, mainly in terms of attackmen playing midfield and in that situation?
Well, what I'm looking at guys that can kind of swap out for one another. I think you can use Gaudette or Cavanaugh interchangeably, however you want to do it. Cavanaugh's a bit more of an outside threat. Gaudette's a bit more inside. Both have strong upside to their game, so you can't really afford to lose them. You only have 4 midfielders on your roster at this point in time. I think Jesse King is listed at midfield, but he played attack at Ohio State. He can do both. If he comes back, I think Jesse King plays out of the midfield and probably pushes out one of those attackmen. You can't really afford to lose any guys on the back end at this point in time, just with what they got in the long season. But I think you got your Jordan Wolf, you got Gutterding. They're starting. They're at attack. They're not going anywhere. They're fine. Randy, and then I would say either a Gaudette or a Cavanaugh are going to be your 3-4. But Randy has the ability to come out of the box. He's big, strong. He's going to draw a pull, whether he comes out of the box or whether he is that third attackman, no matter what. I don't see you not putting a pull on Randy's stats. If you don't, he's going to take you to the rack, and you're going to be giving up lots of points. So it's just as simple as that. I think Heacock also, he's a blend at that attack midfield position. He will kind of be the guy that steps into Jesse King's shoes while Jesse King isn't available. I'm interested to see what would happen when Jesse is available. But at this point, you can take Heacock and run with him. He's a big, strong guy. He can shoot from outside. He can get inside and finish. Natural lefty as well. So, it just kind of fits that role well. But Heacock will come out of the box. Randy will come out of the box a bunch. And then I think while Gaudette has been there and Cavanaugh have been there, one of them might be sitting on a game day roster. You can only carry 19 to dress. So, you might see them interchangeably throughout the season. I just don't know if they both get time. And then same thing with Jackson Morrill. He's probably going to be a guy who gets more time when, other guys are injured. He can come out of the box. All the attackmen in the league can come out of the box, but there are guys that definitely are more suited to down low. I think he might be one of those guys. So he'll be a depth guy when guys are tired or they have 2 games on a weekend. So tons of firepower. I mean, I'm excited to see what Justin Anderson does at this level. He's a machine. And then Ned Crotty, he's up there in career points in professional field. He's a guy that is going to be moving up the ranks the next year or 2. So it's exciting to see what these guys can put together. They came second in the league in the bubble. They came second in that tournament. So unfortunate loss really puts them in the championship game if they can run the table just like the rest of them. And I think they've upgraded.
Absolutely. Very excited to see what this offense looks like. Obviously, a few additions, kind of to see what Sudan and company does. They're putting together this attack, obviously, with the midfield, kind of a few moving pieces that we're excited to see play out. And then, as you said, Jesse King, unfortunately, placed on that unavailable to travel list. He was a part of the first round of announcements a few weeks ago, and we'll hope to see him at some point during this season. But Coach Sudan and staff doing a good job, like I said, to replenish and stock up talent here ahead of training camp. And he was able to bring in some talent on the defensive side as well, bringing in JT Giles-Harris in the college draft, Greg Well and CJ Costabile as well off the waivers. And then he welcomed back Joel White and John Madursky, who were both unavailable last summer in Utah. Obviously, bringing back White is huge. He's still one of the top pulls in this game. And Giles Harris, even though he'll probably miss some time being that he's still playing with Duke this weekend, a huge add given that Chrome will be without Tom Ringney this summer. But how do you expect this defense to look, as there's a few different combinations that this staff could choose to go with?
Yeah, the defense looks like it's going to be Barclay, Bernhardt, JT, Mike Manley, and Greg Whale. I think Manley is going to have some weekends he might not be available just due to work stuff, but you got 3 LSMs. They can play all over the field. They can cover all over the field. If CJ Costabile or Eli Salama has to play down low for a week, that's fine. They can cover that. They can alternate. Like I said, Donnie Moss can pick up a pull if they want to. And then if they do miss JT Giles Harris for that first little bit, that's not the end of the world, because he has some of the most upside in all the incoming college players. So he's going to be a guy that'll adapt very quickly and has been playing a pro-style defense for his whole career at Duke, playing against a lot of those ACC guys already as it is. Madursky, actually, I don't think he even got named back to the camp. I think he was one of those borderline guys anyways. But if somebody does go down, or if anybody, comes up pretty limp for the rest of the season off an injury or whatever, he would be a guy that I'd look for them to pick back up pretty quickly. I thought he played pretty well in the bubble last year, all things considered, as a depth guy. So he could be someone that comes back, but that's outside of the 25 guys that even make the roster. So, that make the roster. So that one, not so much, but 3 LSMs, 5 pulls, 1 short stick D midi that can play long pull. Like, you got lots of options, and all of them have played at this level. So it's a pretty strong group. I'm excited to see what they do with those LSMs, because those 3 guys are pretty unbelievable, each and of themselves. So it'll be a fun team to watch for sure.
Absolutely. They have those 3 LSMs, very talented LSMs. Obviously, Joel White being the veteran there of that group, probably being the LSM that we'll expect to see. Maybe not running wings as often as he did in the past, but definitely expecting him to be out there running transition here. But definitely a lot of options that Sudan can go with here defensively. All of these guys have, as you said, pro-level experience, or even for Giles Harris, not exactly pro-level experience, but being that he plays in the ACC with Duke, kind of getting that every single day, every single week, being that he's going up against ACC talent. But behind this defense, John Galloway, for the most part, has handled the goalie duties for Chrome the past 2 seasons. But going into training camp, some question marks, and rightfully so. He's currently the head coach at Jacksonville University. There's rumors swirling around about the Syracuse head coaching job. He could possibly be a candidate for that job. And then also just the hard data. Despite playing much better last summer, he still is one of the worst save percentages in the league over the past 2 seasons among starting goalies. So how do you expect this goalie situation to play out with the 2 others on this roster, entry draft selection, Sean Scanone, and then waiver ad type boys?
So you basically hit the nail on the head. Galloway's kind of declined from where he's been in his career. He's unreal. He's been hard to beat when he's on, but the last couple of years we haven't seen that level of play out of him. And then on the flip side, Sean Scanone is the 2-time he won the last 2 goalies of the year for the MLL. He's a younger guy. He hasn't stopped winning awards since his senior year at UMass. So he's coming in riding a high for sure, but he knows that it's going to be a tough job to win. I'm not bringing in more than 3 goalies or more than 2 goalies to this roster. So I think Tate Boyce is the odd man out, unfortunately. That being said, if it does come down to Galloway getting a Syracuse head coaching position, or really needing a summer after this refreshed COVID season in 2021, he might have his attention set on, his school and his work obligations, especially if he feels like he's not going to be getting starting time. I would expect Galloway, Scanone to be the 2 guys coming out of camp. There definitely are question marks. I still think it's Galloway's job to lose, but there's a lot of upside to Scanone as your future goalie prospect. So It'll be interesting. I don't think it's hard to choose those two guys. I think that there are right questions being thrown out. Where is this it for Galloway? Does he still have it? But at the end of the day, really, it's going to be some personal decisions behind the scenes that we're not made privy to, and then it's going to be whatever the coaches see in training camp. So Galloway, Skinone, no questions, and then from there, the starter, it's anybody's guess. I would lean Galloway, but Skinone's getting betting odds as an MVP, so we can't tell.
Absolutely. And then in talking to Coach Suden there before the college draft, after the entry draft, he did say, obviously, this is kind of John Galloway's job to lose, but training camp going to be very, very competitive. So good competition to have. Obviously, competition is probably the best problem to have. So we'll see how this goalie situation unfolds here in training camp. Expecting two guys of these three to make the roster, but we'll see how that unfolds. Chrome looking to repeat their success from last year's championship series in Utah, currently holding 9-1 odds to win the championship at the end of this summer. And speaking of championship odds, this week we are given the opening futures odds for MVP, with Lyle Thompson in 2019 MVP, Matt Rambo leading the way, followed by Tom Schreiber and a handful of attackmen. Out of all the names on the board, which ones do you feel have the most value? And then in terms of the guys at the top, who do you like the best?
Well, I'll start with the guys at the top. It just logically makes sense. Lyle Thompson at number one does seem to be that clear-cut favorite. That being said, he's going to be coming into an unknown Cannons roster. I think that you look at Rambo and Zed from their Whip Snakes two-time champion team, and that's a better likelihood if you're trying to go with safe money. Lyle Thompson's phenomenal. He's going to make the team great. Paul Rabel's, on the back end of his career, but he's still a guy that, deserves the respect, and they can really command an offense, and they might get that team going. But it's hard to bet against the house, and the Whip Snakes are the house at this point in time. They are the team. That being said, for odds, I think that you got some good looks in there. For the most money, probably Miles Jones. He's one of the lowest odds. I think he's at 15,000. But adding Rob Pennell behind the cage, giving more skip looks, the way that Perk was playing at the end of last year, Miles might end up getting short stick matchups all season. It's not hard to think that the field is going to be stretched now because you have that quarterback behind the cage. And I thought while it wasn't a bad year, it was a down year for him in the bubble last year. And I think if he really takes that chip on his shoulder and runs with it, he could be a very, very strong MVP candidate. And then Randy Stotts at plus 10,000. I think him coming into an already established Chrome roster with great talent around him. He's got guys at X like Wolf and Gutterding who will open up passing lanes. They're going to be doing a lot of ball carrying. It'll give him opportunities on ball and off ball. I think that he's a guy that, for lower odds, he could be a surprise guy, just like Zed coming out of the player pool last year. So those are two real strong candidates. If you want more, safer bets, you're probably looking at guys like Courier. I think he does a lot for that team where he's, that Tarasenko Swiss Army knife guy. So he can take face off, play wings, offense, defense, everything. And then, after that, maybe a Grant Ament, but he's again at the top of the list. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding this league, like we've said. I think Whip Snakes are safe money, and I think those big two-bomb hybrid downhill Dodger guys like Miles Jones and Perkovic can win you some cash too.
The Whip Snakes do seem like very, very safe money. Obviously, we're trying to look a little bit out of the box here, but then obviously Miles Jones, Sergio Perkovic looking like probably a pretty good payout if you were to hit those nicely. We had Miles Jones on the show last Friday. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you do. In terms of some that I like here, you might have to scroll down a little bit if you're on the DraftKings website, but Water Dogs attackman Kieran McCardle is at plus 15,000 odds. I've been kind of trying to push the Kieran McCardle train here a little bit, bringing in Ryan Brown. He played with Ryan Brown in 2019 with the Atlas, obviously the two of them together. I believe McCardle scored 12 goals, 13 assists, something like that in 2019 in the regular season. 2020 last year, obviously, he was one of the top goal scorers in the league. So now you're bringing in Ryan Brown to play with McCardle. You're bringing in Michael Sowers. You're bringing in Mikey Schlosser. Zach Currier, as you just mentioned before, he will be healthy. So kind of all the pieces coming together here for the Water Dogs. I like Kieran McCardle to go off. You also brought up new Chrome attackman Randy Stotts. He's at plus 10,000. Ryder Garnsey, you kind of brought up Miles Jones and Sergio Perkovic. I like Ryder Garnsey. He's at plus 10,000. Matt Cavanaugh is at plus 2,000, so maybe a little bit a better odds. So just a few names there going down the list that we like right off the bat. Obviously, your best bet is probably with Lyle or Rambo or Gutterding or one of those other top names, most likely a Whipsnakes player if you really want to be safe. But if you're interested in laying down a few greasy futures bets on the MVP, check out DraftKings for the full list. Liam, any last words before we wrap up today's show and get settled in for the Final Four weekend with semifinals starting tomorrow?
I got to ask you, one, about the odds. Who would your defensive player be if you're taking somebody? And then two, who are we going to do picks for this weekend? Are we going to go with that?
You ready?
I think I got my picks. I went 4-0 last weekend, so I was feeling pretty good after that one. But
let me answer your first question. We had Matt Dunn on the show also last week. I like Matt Dunn as a favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. He obviously won the award last year. I think he should have won the award in 2019. Obviously, two pointers won the award there in 2019. He was the 2018 MLL Defensive Player of the Year. So Matt Dunn coming in as 2 in the last 3, could have been 3 in the last 3. I like Matt Dunn as the Defensive Player of the Year. Let's get into the picks. I'm going to be making my picks with Harry, which we actually did that already. So me and Harrison already did that, but just kind of into our picks. North Carolina and Virginia, first game here of the weekend on Saturday.
I will lean, as much as I hate to do it, I'm going to lean Virginia. I think UNC's had a great year all year, and I think UNC might hold the edge. I don't recall the exact thing. I know both teams have beaten one another. I don't want to do my guy Justin Anderson. I'm Chrome. I've been covering Chrome all offseason. But the way UVA played last weekend is scary. And they
put Georgetown away very, very easily.
It looks like a 2019 championship team a little bit over there, and those guys want to get back to it. I can tell. So it's a little dicey with that pick, but I'm going to lean UVA even with the year that UNC's had.
Taking the defending champs to get back to the championship on Monday. How about the other one, Duke and Maryland?
I hate betting against Maryland after I backed them last weekend, but I think I'm going to do it. I think looking at Duke and looking at such tight 1-goal games, I can't go back to Maryland again, as much as Austin Owens is going to hate me for this. I know that if it gets down to a 1-goal game, Duke isn't rolling over. You got Joe Robertson with 3 OT winners. You got those guys. They've won all their close games, I think, pretty much all of them. And the whole Sowers drive, we saw it late when they beat Notre Dame in overtime. I think if they get that close, and if he gets that close to a championship, that he's going to take a game over, and everybody who's been writing him off this year is probably going to regret it. But also expect Jared Bernhardt to drop 6.
Oh, yeah. I expect Jared Bernhardt to drop a few. Mike Sowers, friend of the show, we had him on after the college draft. So we have not been here at Goal Line Extended Lacrosse Flash. We have been pro Michael Sowers. There are some people, as you said there, that are. Now, I wouldn't say anti-Michael Sowers or anti-Michael Sowers, but obviously being that he scored 9.5 points, a game at Princeton, obviously coming now to the ACC, a little bit tougher competition, but Sowers still putting up great numbers, number overall 2 pick, for a reason. So very excited to see him this weekend. Liam, thank you again for joining us, making your picks, his picks, as well as my picks. I'm just saying because me and Harry haven't recorded that segment for college yet, but we did obviously have it in the show already. But our picks will all be on Lacrosse Flash on Saturday morning before those 2 semifinal games. So make sure to check that out. Make sure to keep your eyes open for that. But that is going to do it for today's show here of Goal Line Extended. I want to thank you all for watching and or listening. If you are not already, make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube as well as on whatever podcast platform that you use. You can also head on over to lacrosseflash.com. All of our podcasts are there, as well as Liam's preview for Chrome ahead of this season, and the first 5 season previews that we have done are also there as well. So make sure to check that out and keep your eyes open for our final 2 that we will be rolling out next week ahead of the season. And also new on the Flash site right now, Cannons attackman and 2020 MLO champion Bryce Wasserman talks about his journey to lacrosse into the PLL on the 2nd edition of Behind the Cage with John Lintz. Make sure to check that out. You can also follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at GL Extended. All of the links that you will need will be in the description of the video or podcast that you are viewing or listening to right now. And we will be back on Tuesday to recap championship weekend, and we'll have another team and hopefully guest as we continue our PLL team previews ahead of the 2021 season, and then whatever other news that we get in the world of lacrosse. Tune in Tuesday so that you do not miss it. I hope you all have an incredible weekend. Enjoy the Final Four, and we will see you on Tuesday.
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at GL Extended, and subscribe to the show on any of your favorite podcast outlets. You can find Lacrosse Flash on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and online at lacrosseflash.com.